Right, hello, welcome to the Sisyphus Complex Solution. This is episode 192 and it's called Charlatan Scale. In case you're not familiar, the Charlatan Scale is a qualitative process for determining people who create the illusion of competence. That's basically something that is going to be highly appropriate for this week's audit of the MOD. And it literally is a legitimate process. So this is not just me making something up, just so that you understand that. Right, before I do go into the process, I've got to make a couple of words really, and that based off of this piece of these events of the last week or so. And so I'm not going to break into Japanese this week. I normally do when I'm doing some Japanese news, but I'm not going to bother. I suppose the thing to say really in that is to say well done to the Japanese for ensuring that they're not dominated by communists and the purveyors of the invasion from the third world. I mean, the scale of the win here and that for this Takeichi woman was pretty significant, and no doubt it had a great deal of support based off of the fact that what happened to Shinzo Abe. What I would say is that a lot of people do need to be reminded of the last time that the communists started to try shit in Japan, and in 1960 when they tried this, and it was under a fella called Inajiro Asanuma, and he was literally put to the sword on stage in front of an audience and actually in front of cameras. So yeah, good to see that that's kind of continues, not quite in the same fashion. Not that I would complain, but at least they're rejecting all of that nonsense. Now, I suppose the caution that I have to say really is that the apparent intent to reframe the constitution of Japan, which limits them to self-defense, which, I mean, generally speaking, that should be something that anybody has as a basis anyway. But what too many people don't seem to understand is that Japan has the fifth largest military in the world. And so in making a change to their constitution, it literally means that they're shifting from an ability to defend themselves to an ability to utilise their forces external to their own borders. I'm kind of going to go with the good option here, which is that this is in preparation for any need for Japan to assist the US in the defence of Taiwan. I think that's predominantly what this is all about. But I have noticed that their hatred of communism is being stated as being somewhat wider than their own borders. And that does basically tend to indicate yet more sort of eye on China type of situations. That might not be the wisest of moves, and that because yeah, it's not 1940 anymore, fellas. Wind your necks in a little bit. That's a particular part of Japanese history I don't really recommend that they repeat. So it is a good result overall. I'd rather they were taking this particular path and having some men having the balls to stand forward, rather than again having to be yet another country that's pushing forward women all the bloody time. Because I mean, did the only proper example I can think of in that of a woman doing anything successfully, and that has been within Thatcher. But even then, she started to go a bit off the rails and believe in her own publicity. So it is a bit of a conundrum. But then at the same time, when I look at all of the people that were standing in the elections in Japan, I mean, it seemed to be dominated by women. So yeah, I mean, they're not exactly without their problems, put it that way. But the one thing I would suggest to Japan is that if they are going to do something in terms of dealing with China and having this issue around wanting to push back against communists, just remember your position in the world in terms of processing materials, because the Chinese don't really get much shit done without that. So focus where the strength lays. But apart from that, you know, best of luck to them. I hope things work out okay. So back to the UK and the process stage, where I'm continuing the audit of the offices under the MOD, and now I'm moving into offices that are not actually listed underneath the MOD, but which are absolutely a part of the MOD, because they're using taxpayer money. I don't care if they call themselves arm's length, it doesn't matter. Right. So this week we're looking at the Defence Equipment and Support Organisation, where I'll do the standard beginning of the financials and the benchmark year of 2019 to 2020, where there's a taxpayer burden of 1.15 billion. There's an average salary of 60.5k and a cost of employment at 70%. Over the 5 years that the fake Tories were in charge, there'd been some fluctuations of staff, with a particular slump in 2021-22, which was more than made up for in the subsequent 2 years. But in the main, the spend has increased, and so have the salaries. So again, no sign of any austerity throughout this period. So in terms of the first full year of Labour, well, we've got the staff and the overall spend that have gone down a little bit, which is not such a bad thing, I suppose. But as per usual, the salaries keep going up. You know, you got to pay your useful idiots to get their vote, haven't you? Because if you've got the public sector, then you know. So, like I say, keep in mind with this, we're talking about average salary. So that does mean that the people at the higher end of the earning spectrum and that are going to be exceptionally high. And depending on where you look, essentially, like I said, just from the average point of view, and that you're looking at double the national average, which doesn't really make a great deal of sense. Now, because they've got nearly 12,500 people getting this amount of money, like I say, when we're wondering how it is that you get a voting base for this ideology of command and control demise of the country, basically, this is the sort of people that can't see further than their nose. The typical sort of leftist delusionalists. And what you will see, and I have mentioned this previously, and that is that when I've talked about voting blocks, and in terms of the general public creating voting blocks, you have to remember that these people are effectively a voting block as well. I mean, when it comes down to offices like this, and very much similar to like with the NHS, if you put all of these people together from the public sector that are getting their 30 pieces of silver for being useful idiots, of course they're going to vote for more of that. They don't really have the ability to think that everything that they're getting is dependent on stealing it from other people. You know, so you are talking about something that makes up 20% of the working population. And that's why you end up with things like 20% of the vote going towards Labour pederast supporters. So do try to understand that, because essentially what you're dealing with here when it comes down to public sector, it's literally just bribing people with money because they're too stupid to understand that they're facilitating their own demise. Anyway, that's the kind of the numbers side of things dealt with. So back to the specific office, and if you hadn't noticed in terms of the staff, this is by far the largest office that we've looked at so far in terms of the MOD. It's, I mean, numbers wise, as in staff, cost, everything else. So, what are they about? So, DE and S is basically the shortened version of what they are and what it is they're supposed to be doing. I think we can see this is a pretty important part of the MOD, which is why it's absolutely critical that it is included within this audit, by way of the fact that they are responsible for, or they claim to be responsible for, the projects and the procurement of 80% of all equipment for the military. So Air Force, Navy, Army, across all three. That's pretty significant. Obviously, once again, they want to claim being arm's length, which makes no sense whatsoever and really isn't arm's length at all. But then in their priorities, I see that they do have the gall of stating that keeping the nation safe and prosperous is at the top of their list. Well, if you want to keep the nation safe and prosperous, I don't really think being based in Bristol since its inception in 2014 was the wisest of choices. That is quite an important factor as well, because Bristol is rather well known for being the home to the lunatic left anti-fart and various other delusionalists. So I don't really believe in coincidences like that. But you know, we'll come back to that to a certain degree a bit later on. So what we then need to understand is that, as this is a critical part of the MOD, that the boys in the military are absolutely then dependent on these people getting this job done correctly and making sure that they get the best equipment. If we currently go to the DE&S government-based website, and whilst I'm not too sure for how much longer this will be there, despite the fact, I mean, it's been there for ages already, and that it's been up since March of 2024. Their main article is around their claims about this Ajax. Basically, they call it armoured vehicle. It's a tank. And I have had to use the government website because it does seem that their own dedicated website seems to be having some issues lately. Whether that's directed at particular individuals, that's a different matter. But it's not going to be a problem as far as what I need to do. So they have this article about how amazing this Ajax tank has been tested, and when you put in this at the forefront of your government website to suggest your capabilities, then that is them turning around and saying, well, you know, this is what the indication is as to the level of competence within this organisation. But then if we fast forward to January of this year, I mean, I have kind of mentioned this one before, but it's worth repeating. Oh dear. This particular project has been a complete and utter fuck up. And it has done more harm to anybody that even bothers to try to drive this thing than it could ever do to any enemy. You'd never get to reach the enemy. You'd probably be dead inside there before you got anywhere. You wouldn't get out of the parking lot. It's fucking ridiculous. It's got parts falling off, and it's just an absolute disaster area. So it does then beg the question as to how the hell it is that they're still promoting this on the website as some kind of a success in 2024, and yet just somehow sacking the boss alone is supposed to be good enough. I mean, this particular project didn't even start with DE&S. It actually began in 2010, and the conversations around it go back even earlier. So precisely how it is that this organisation took over the project and how they can claim any kind of priority about defence of the nation is a bit beyond me, to be perfectly frank, because this is gross incompetence. So what we've got here is a clear case of an organisation based on charlatans. If they applied the charlatan scale, you'd have a serious problem in this organisation. So what else have these charlatans been up to? Because I know there'll be people out there and say, well, you can't make this claim just off of the basis of one project. Pretty bloody important one. Right, and because the dedicated site of the DES doesn't seem to work, at least not for me. I've come across this problem before, but never mind. And despite the fact that, like I said, the government has still got this on their website from 2 years ago, so therefore pushing this absolute lie of success, what else have we got that we can refer to? Well, I mentioned the NHS when I was talking about useful idiots and their voting blocks, because rather like the NHS, this particular area of military procurement has been subject to report after report after report already. It's only been going for 11 years. And each time the report points out the problems that are then ignored completely. This particular one comes from July of 2023, when they already knew about the problems of Ajax. So in 2023 they know about the problems of Ajax, and yet they're still promoting it as its success in March of 2024. And then how in the hell, as a result of this, do they only get to get rid of one boss in January of 2026? This is the problem that you're going to have when it comes down to these kinds of organisations. The list of failures from this organisation is somewhat long, and do understand that these failures then go into destroyers, transport aircraft, you know, the ones that are supposed to be the replacement for the Hercules, as an example. Now, there's a couple more examples on the screen here. But when we've got absolute retards playing fast and loose with what is effectively the lives of our boys that join up, at the same time as they're all running around playing Johnny Big Balls, claiming that they want to start a fight with Putin with shit that doesn't work. This is not a small problem. You only have to look at the title of the bloody document. It's broke. No matter what it relates to, if we can see these kinds of reports, and we can see that these idiots in Parliament, even they can recognise the extent of the problem. And every single time it ends up being a case of, oh, well, we put some words on a piece of paper, so therefore that's it. And then these absolute retards in these offices just carry on their merry way and just get more shit with every single passing day. This is not a case of me turning around and going, look, these people are absolutely retarded. They're massively incompetent. You don't have to take my word for it. It's literally here on the fucking screen. It's literally being said inside Parliament. And they've done nothing. So what has happened since this declaration had been broken? Well, let's just take the example from the most recent report, this 2024-25 annual report. And there's a few useful pieces of information inside here. And so we can begin with apparently having wasted 1.4 billion during that one particular year on the fake war in the Ukraine, which we can and very much should be calling out even more now, based on the fact that we've got added evidence of the long-term corruption, specifically around the Ukraine, that has been coming out from the Epstein files. But, you know, we are in a government of pederast protectors, so the whole thing is and was an engineered conflict by scumbags. And before anybody wants to get on their high horse about that, bother to try to look back at the 8 years prior to the invasion and how they were bombing, the Ukrainians were bombing their own people. And then all of the interference from the US, the UK, the EU that then caused that Orange Revolution. This was never a simple case of, oh, poor Ukraine being invested by nasty Russia. It's always been about criminals from all sides profiting once again from the destruction of a nation. Not that I really give that much of a shit, because quite frankly, and that the so-called, oh, don't call them Nazis now. You were all calling them Nazis in 2012. Some of us do have a memory. I would absolutely end all of the contributions to this, rather than what's just been announced, which is yet another 500 million to waste on this corruption. And then for the people that keep on asking for evidence of the spending, I think they don't really seem to understand that the evidence of the spending is actually found in this particular office. So they might want to educate themselves on that. But you can see how it is a complete and utter waste of our money anyway. The chances that any of this so-called equipment, which a great part of it is bloody second-hand as well, the chances that this is going to be, if you audit it properly, actually worth 1.4 billion, yeah, I'd call that into question as well. But if anybody thinks that this type of equipment is going to have any impact whatsoever, you are completely fucking deluded. And that's including putting that into the mix with all of the other useless crap that is being fed through to them from the Europeans. Because the Americans are basically backing out of this now. If anybody thinks that this pittance is going to have any impact against the Russian army, you're not all there. So those people that keep on turning, I mean, it's been a long-standing perspective for me, at least, that anybody that wants to go on about that, oh, me Ukraine, save me Ukraine, stick me Ukraine flag in me bio and what have you, fuck off to the Ukraine and fight it then. Have the courage of your conviction, get on a plane, fuck off. Go stand in the front line. Let the Ukrainians that have actually had to put up with all of this crap since 2014 and probably longer, let them stand to one side and let you go to the front. Simple equation, really. Courage of conviction, off you go. In terms of the domestic numbers here, they do have a figure stipulated of a spend of 12.17 billion. Now I've got to keep that in mind, because when I come to the total figures at the end for the MOD, you know, when I produce and then when I also produce the full 5-year numbers, it could very well be the case, and possibly should be, that this spend ends up having to be included into the end cumulative sum. So I'll have to check that at the end, because The reason why there's a possibility that it might not need it to be added in there is because when I do actually go into the Army, Navy, Air Force and so forth, if these people want to claim themselves as an arm's length body, then these numbers should also then be reflected in the purchase side from those organisations. So I want to make sure I don't do any sort of double accounting as far as this is concerned. But I've got to keep those numbers in mind. In terms of what it is that they're claiming that they did on the domestic front, it is pretty bloody hard to take it seriously because of the fact that you've had Ajax and all the other failed projects that they're still claiming as they're delivered assets. And I'll always fail to take it seriously when you've got this nonsense of claiming these efficiencies have been realised. By default, you've added a link into the supply chain and you've added 1.5 billion into that supply chain. So suggesting that you've saved 715 million rather, doesn't really equate then, does it? It's not fucking rocket science, this stuff. This is why you can't trust government auditing of any description. These people will lie. I mean, obviously, this is not just a problem with this particular office, so I'm not blaming them specifically for this, though they do hold blame for it. I mean, this is a wider problem of government in its entirety being charlatans. So just keep in mind then that from the accounts, from the performance and from everything else, basically what we can see is we've got ourselves a waste of money organisation. So let's also then get a bit of an idea as to how this becomes an organisation of charlatans. From their annual report, this is the picture that they choose to promote from the selection of their staff. And I really don't care very much about people who want to cry like bitches with a skin knee about how people's appearance is perceived, because this looks more like a backroom staff meeting at a Costa Coffee. This looks like the sort of people that would be sitting around and that thinking that there is some incredible craftsman because they've managed to pour a hot drink. Utterly farcical. There is no room in any office based on buying military equipment that our boys absolutely need to depend on for their lives that should look like this. Fucking farcical. And I can say from experience here now, because I have sat in procurement meetings with the military, and I've done that both in Japan and in the US, and each and every meeting I ever sat in, which is not a small amount of meetings either, the guys that sat on the other side of the table were serious people in uniform. They weren't leftist retards from Bristol. So in terms of being serious, and let's just go a little bit beyond the visual and the fact that they are in Bristol, it's not just a problem of the staff themselves. Because again, we've got a much wider problem that shouldn't exist in any office, but when you're sticking it into something that is producing tanks that don't fucking work, what you should never ever want to see is the ideology that brings about absolute nonsense like this. What the fuck has climate change got to do with anything? So you've got bloody coffee makers that are supposed to be dealing with equipment, and now you're being told that you've got to take climate change into consideration. You've got your CO2 emissions and a bunch of prats planting a fucking tree. Because that's really important, isn't it? That needs to be in a bloody annual report, doesn't it? Trade unions. Yeah, they don't have a history of destroying bloody industry, do they? And of course you've got to have your die shit. You're based in Bristol that is loaded with anti-fart and leftist retards as it is. And you've got all this leftist garbage piled on top. So somebody tell me exactly. Do you think that there's a possible reason as to why you've got an office full of charlatans? Not exactly fucking rocket science, is it? And our boys in any conflict whatsoever will die because of these people. Not that they give a shit. Yet another reason. If anybody that's got anybody with a family out there that's got young kids that are considering the military, understand what the problem is here. There's a reason why out in the likes of Afghanistan and whatever, because I mean it's probably a longer problem than just within this office, because out in the likes of Afghanistan, our boys were known as the borrowers by the Americans because they had nothing, no equipment of any value whatsoever. Nothing fucking worked. And you've got these mealy-mouthed shits standing in front of bloody press conferences well away from any danger going, oh, we're going to put more money into Ukraine. Oh, Britain's ready to fight again. Fuck off. I find this, in case you hadn't noticed, I find this kind of stuff absolutely bloody infuriating. Because once again, they'll just literally meat grinder. Done intentionally to see anything that we try to do be a failure. Any kind of first priority defence of the nation. Not a chance in hell with this. And I'm sick of all of these people that keep having this delusion of coming out and saying, oh, the British military is one of the best in the world. No, you're not. Not even fucking close. There's a reason why you go out into places and that where they're bloody a bunch of peasants in the sand dunes and you can't even fucking defeat them. There's a reason for that. Absolutely farcical. So there's your DE and S. So, keeping the equipment spend out of the equation for the time being and just going with their actual annual report figures, we can see that the cumulative of the MOD has now reached nearly 3 billion for the benchmark period. Like I say, when I get to the end of the MOD, I'll show the full 5 years. In terms of policies, what should not really come as a great shock to anybody. Yes, of course, I would absolutely get rid of this idiot bloody ideological retard charlatan office. I wouldn't write a report and then do fuck all about it. I'd actually end it. You bring this stuff back in-house. You let it get dealt with by serious people who not only understand the consequences of if you end up being a complete retard and produce stuff that doesn't bloody work. But you also make sure that these are the people that would be making these kinds of decisions that are fully aware of the jeopardy when they fail to deliver. Because there's a bloody good chance that they don't end up being sat in it as well. Get some actual... Because I hate this... I hate that fucking description from when Labour came in office. The adults are back in the room. No, you're not. No, you're not. What you've done is replace one bunch of socialist retards with an even worse bunch of socialist retards, and none of them know what they're doing on anything. Get actual adults back in the room. Ones whose lives depend on it. And we can save the taxpayer 1.15 billion while we're at it. Absolutely bloody disgraceful. Right. As soon as it's becoming a bit of a theme now and that, we're going to now move into the DVLA saga portion. And as of today, bullshit stage 2 came to an end, and I had a letter come through today where the liars are lying again. So first of all, they claim that their system shows a footprint. If anybody makes any failed registration attempts, their footprint shows it. How retarded do you have to be? That if your system hasn't actually worked, do you think possibly your footprint doesn't fucking show either? You thick bastards. Christ almighty. If it could work in any way, shape or form in the first place, I wouldn't need to have sent a letter then, would I? So I called bullshit on that pitiful excuse. But the key part to this one really is that then we get into the your vehicle was spotted bollocks. I'll be coming back to it a little bit later on as well, but suffice to say, in terms of being spotted, you have traffic wardens, and they basically go around all day just being a general dick that nobody likes. But they're looking for any slight parking infringement. What they're not doing is walking around checking every single fucking number plate. Because if they did, they'd never get out a bloody street that they started in. So once again, being spotted, I tend to call bullshit on that. But I'll show the evidence as to why it's bullshit anyway. And then we get this ending retarded nonsense of you can go to the complaints assessor as stage 3, who will apparently look at any complaint into government so long as it's not based on complaining about government. Why would I be shocked? Why would I be shocked? So let's deal with this spotted claim, shall we? Because I did inform them of this. I haven't sent them the actual email evidence. I gave them the quote, so they can't say that I didn't give it to them. The DVLA authorised them to do it. They told them to do it. So despite the fact that I've already sent them a letter a month before to say that their system is broken, they have then told their useful idiots to come along and clamp and then steal my vehicle, prior to having made any response to the letter that I sent to them, informing them of the problem. This is what you called targeted. These dipshits can't even understand the lies that they tell. That's what you end up with in these idiot systems where they all think, my computer said this, doesn't matter what everybody else in there, because you're all doing your own stupid little thing, and you can't figure out that one person might have done something different to you, which all equates to lying. And obviously the dipshit in this situation is, unsurprisingly, yet another woman. But then this is where laying traps is required, really. As I said, I knew damn well that they were going to spew this bullshit again. So, I told them that I had proof of this, and they've just put their foot straight back in it again. Okay, that's fine. So right now the running cost that I'm demanding of them, it stands at 38,000. Then there's a loss of no insurance claims bonus because the insurance has now run out. Then there's any damage that takes place to the vehicle, and if they do dispose of it or whether, there's going to be another 16k on top for that. And then there's also charges that I'll put on them for not having paid the first instalment of 12k. I've also told them that I want these women fired, because people like this should never be in any kind of position in public office, because this is misconduct in public office. The Nolan principles apply in these offices. Lying is not tolerated. And then in addition, if they do damage the vehicle, because today is the day, according to them, that they will get rid of the vehicle. Well, okay, that's fine. So then you get aggravated criminal charges put on top. Aggravated criminal damages, sorry, put on top. A criminal offence. Now this stupid bint then tried to propose an out-of-court settlement for me to pay £315 in a letter that I don't have. So basically I've already responded to them and told them where they can put that particular out-of-court settlement. And so for clarity, because I am really, really sick of dealing with these low-level morons that look like exactly what you'd expect, I have been making sure to have contact with the CEO of the DVLA, a guy called Tim Moss. Because yes, I can find all of your details. But then I've also been keeping the Parliamentary Ombudsman informed as well. And so they are going to be kept on their toes, because I will follow through the process right the way through to it becoming an actual legal case. Because fuck them. I don't like liars. I don't like thieves. The latest that has taken place later on this afternoon is that, yes, now it is with the Parliamentary Ombudsman. So, little Miss Useless MP, you've been completely pushed to one side. You're irrelevant. Normally when you go into the Parliamentary Ombudsman, it has to be recommended by an MP. But I made it plain to the Ombudsman that she didn't understand what the hell she was supposed to be doing. So yeah, ongoing, still ongoing. But I have also made sure that the holding company, because as I say, the company that has this, what is it, £25 million contract to go around stealing people's cars, called NSL. They're owned by a company called Marston Holdings. And I'm making sure that they are kept informed of this as well. So far they've been, the one time that I needed them to actually make some kind of response, They were responsive, so I'll give them a little bit of credit for that. But they do have their employees misrepresenting themselves as the DVLA. That's a no-no. That's another lie that goes into the equation, if and when required. Now, on an additional relevant note, it does seem that since I've started making all of these problems known, it's spurred quite a few complaints. There's quite a little movement getting going now. Now, I'm sure that there'll be certain people that will sit back and go, oh, I didn't know what was going on with yours, and that it's nothing to do. I don't really give a shit. I made these things known, and I saw nothing prior to me making these things known, and now all of a sudden I can see it popping up all over the place, and it's coming from certain, I don't know, certain groups, certain individuals, including certain former politicians as well. There's a whole wide range of people that are now suddenly speaking up about the DVLA. Good. I do think the one petition that is out there at the moment, and that's asking for an overhaul of the charges to vehicles older than 20 years. I think that one is a little bit misguided, because most of the ones that are being attacked at the moment are not yet 20 years old. Soon will be, but they're not yet. So I think there's a little bit of an error in terms of that calculation. But nevertheless, the whole system is bullshit. And all it is screw the motorist, do the coercion. If we don't want you to own vehicles anymore, we want you to own nothing and be happy, remember? I have to keep repeating that one. They are looking to steal people's property and prevent people from owning anything of their own. And they are pushing through coercive tactics to enable that. It's going full commie retard. Full delusional totalitarian wanker state. Rather like the European Union. I ain't putting up with it. I am not putting up with it. And I am not, certainly not interested in some low-grade, stupid bint lying to me. Based out of fucking Swansea. So that kind of does it for this week, I suppose. Another happy episode. But, you know, I mean, this is life in the UK now. You literally have to, every single day, you're having to push back against something. In the case of the DVLA and that, you have to push back for fucking weeks and months. Because they've got their bullshit system and that where they seem to think that there's some protected class. They're not. I've got a little bit of concern about the person that I've had the contact from in terms of the Ombudsman already. But I'll deal with them one step at a time. And like I say, I'll follow the process and I'll be nice until I'm not. Their choice. We're seeing more and more and more and more shit. And as much as for the longest time I've been turning around and saying, look, there are solutions out there that we can actually turn this around. obviously nobody really wants to actually get off their ass and do it. And so, yeah, I mean, if it takes that moment for people to get off their ass to be that moment when they go out there and start setting fucking fire to everything, so be it. So be it. I don't care. I literally don't care anymore. I still go with the recommendation that if you're going to burn everything down, choose wisely. Don't burn your own shit. Because it will come to it. It will definitely come to it. They keep this crap going, it's going to happen. So on that happy note, I think I shall wish whatever good week you might possibly be able to have. And I'll see you again next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.